Okay, so as the title of my video says, what gear do we really need? It's a subject that we talk about all the time as photographers. I mean, you get together with 2 or 3 other photographers or just one photographer, and it seems like you spend a lot of time talking about the different lenses and cameras and all the different things you can buy and get, and we want a lot of stuff, but what do we really need to do the kind of photography that we want to do? Is that statement that a lot of times people say that, gear is not important. Is that true? I've seen it a lot of YouTube. People say that the gear isn't really important as the photographer, and how he, what kind of composition you use and what kind of imagination you use and your creativity and all those things. And that's true. I mean, a good photographer can use an iPhone and take a better picture than somebody with a $10,000 camera if the person with a $10,000 camera is not a photographer. Okay, so that in some senses that's true, but I think that it's not completely true. I think gear does matter. I think having the right gear for the type of photography that you do is important. And I think it's important to get the best gear that you can get for what you want to do. And when I say the best, I don't mean the most expensive. I mean the gear that will give you the results that you're looking for to get the kind of images that you have a vision for. When I first started getting into serious about photography, I went out and I bought a Canon Rebel, and I bought a 18 to 200 millimeter Tamron lens, and it was a variable aperture lens. And I took that camera and I had so much fun with it, and I would just take it everywhere I went. I would be driving around on a rainy day and stop at a light and open the window and take a picture of the rain or the people next to me or something like that. I just was crazy. I was just taking a lot of pictures, and I really enjoyed that camera and I had a lot of fun with it. And then I began to look and see all the different types of cameras that were available to me and lenses were available to me, and the more I read, the more I thought, well, I need these things. And so I started spending a lot of money on photography equipment. At one point in time, I guess, and I have never been a professional photographer. I made money at photography on different occasions. I've done weddings, I've done portraits for companies and things like that, but I never actually made a living with photography. So when I say that at one point I had in my bag maybe $15,000 worth of photo gear, that sounds a little extreme, and it was. I had lenses from a range of, say, 15 millimeters to 400 millimeters, and I had that in zoom lenses and I had it in prime lenses, and I just didn't need it. I had macro lenses, I had all these different things, and I found that a lot of the gear that I had I only occasionally used, and some of the gear I had I almost never took out of my camera bag and put on my camera. So one day I was sitting in my house and I'm looking at different gear and I'm looking about what I could get and what I'd like to have, and my young teenage daughter was sitting there across from me, and I was talking to her about, well, I'd like to have this and like to have that, and how sometimes teenagers can be real sages. Well, she looks at me and she says, well, Dad, she says, stop being such a consumer and be a photographer. And it just hit me. It was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm spending more time obsessing over photography gear than I am on thinking about photography and how I want my photography to develop and what kind of vision I should have for my photography. And I have to say, when she said that to me, it just struck me, and I was like, yeah, they got to make a change up here. It's important, yeah, that I have the right gear for what I want to do, but what do I want to do, and what gear do I really need to have? And why am I spending so many resources on buying things that I'm not even really going to use, only so that I can have them? As I said, having the best gear you can have doesn't mean that it needs to be the most expensive gear. If something's more expensive, it doesn't mean that it's better. Okay, I have had some really good experience recently with different companies that make lenses. I have my newest camera is a Sony A7 III. It is supposedly the low end or the consumer or the entry level full frame camera from Sony, but it really does everything I could possibly want it to do. It has plenty of resolution. It has 24 megapixels, which is plenty of resolution for me for what I do. And I love it. And I could have spent $3,000 for a A7 A7 III, which has 42 megapixels, but I don't need that. And so I've tried to change how I do these things, how I buy things, and I put thought into it. Is what do I need to get the best image that I can get, and not be foolish and spend more money than I have to. And I can spend that money on airplane tickets, to go to places, to go to different cities, to travel and to see things, and to go to places where I can get really great images. You know, I love to travel to foreign cities and do street photography and tour and vacation photography, I guess you'd call it, or travel photography. I found the best way to decide what I need is to look at all my images, and I go on Lightroom and I'll put in my metadata, and I'll put in and I'll see what, and I'll put in focal lengths and see what focal lengths that I use the most. And those focal lengths that I use the most, that's what I need. I don't need a 400 millimeter lens if I never ever use it. So, and I found that actually the focal length I use most is in a wider range. So I have more lenses like that, from 50 millimeter on down to 24 millimeter. I found that when I try to use really wide lenses like a 15 millimeter, it's actually oftentimes too wide for me with what I do and how I approach a scene. So I don't use really ultra wide lenses like that. I mean, a lot of people do, and that's great if that's how it works for you. I found that I started buying these lenses by a company that has two names. It's named Rokinon and it's named Samyang. And I love these little lenses that they make. They fit on the camera so nicely. They make the camera really light for when you're doing walk around street photography. They're well made. They're made out of plastic. They have a metal mount on the back, but they have their widest aperture is f2.8, and that's good for me because my Sony a7 III is really good in low light and it performs really well at high ISOs. And I found that this works really well for me using these lenses. And these lenses are, this is the 35 millimeter. This lens cost me $250. Now I have a friend of mine who has the Sony 35 millimeter. It has weather sealing. It's built a little sturdier, and that's the only difference as far as I can see. The image quality is the same. And so I can pay $250 for this lens, and he paid $800 for his lens. So I can buy 3 of these before I get up to what he paid for his one lens. This is what I have on my a7 III right here is the Samyang 24 millimeter lens 2.8, and it also is a very sharp lens and very nice lens. Both of these lenses are autofocus, and they work really, really well. And then my other lens that I'm using is the Sony 50 millimeter 1.8. It's the inexpensive one. It was, I think I paid $210 for it at Best Buy. And this lens is really sharp. It does a good job. When it first came out, a lot of people are upset with it because they said that the autofocus was very slow and unreliable. Well, since this first came out, a new Sony came out, was the a7 III, and also an update on the Sony a7 III came out. And this lens, the autofocus is fine. It's as fast as I need it to be. It's a sharp lens. I like it a lot. And it's very light. I like light lenses. Now, this is my biggest lens. This is the Sony $600 85 millimeter 1.8. This is a beautiful lens. It's actually very well built. It's metal. It has a lot of great features on it, and I love it. It's incredibly sharp. It's the best one of the best portrait lenses I've ever owned. The one that could compete with it, I had when I was a Canon shooter, I had the Canon 135 f2. That was a really, really sharp lens. I don't see a difference. This one gives you everything you could possibly want. So those 1, 2, 3, 4 lenses are all I need. Now I also have, when I bought this a7 III, I bought the 28 to 70 millimeter kit lens, and that is a nice lens. It is. It's inexpensive. It's light. It has weather sealing. So I carry that along sometimes just in case, like if it's going to rain or something, that I know I can put something on my camera that I can get wet and it won't hurt it. The 85 millimeter 1.8 also has weather sealing, but none of these other lenses do. But that's okay because I don't do a lot of inclement weather shooting, and if I do, I'll bring an umbrella. And if something happens to this $250 lens, I'll buy another one. So, but as far as quality of image, these lenses all give me great quality of image. I really love primes. I love the sharpness they give me. I love the fact that they force me to think more about my shot, because I can't just zoom in and out. I have to think about, okay, where do I need to stand? What do I need to do to make this shot right, to make it work for me? And it also forces me to see things in different focal lengths because different focal lengths give you a different type of image. And so when you're zooming in and out, you're not even thinking about that. But when you're using a lens that's prime, and you can't change the focal length, you think more about how you're going to take the image. I don't know. That's just been my experience. So I just would like to ask the question, what type of gear do you really need? And I would like to suggest to you, don't be a consumer, be a photographer. Thanks for listening and watching. If you like my video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and I'd love it if you subscribe. I've taken sort of a hiatus from doing videos for a while, but I'm back to it now, and I hope to make a lot more. I'm planning on making a trip to Europe in July. It's kind of a business trip, so I don't know. I'll do photography, of course, when I go, but I won't do as much as I normally would do if I'm just going on a photography trip. But I try to maybe do a video there. I'm going to Poland. I try to maybe do a video there while I'm there, and give you an idea, maybe do some shots in Warsaw and do a video in Warsaw. That's a fun place to be. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. See you next time. Bye.